Today on the Pro Talk podcast, you get to meet a Hall of Famer. But before we meet today's Hall of Famer, make sure you push the subscription button as well as the notification bell so you never miss another episode of the Pro Talk podcast, as well as another conversation with an amazing professional. Remember that movie, Mr. Holland's Opus? Well, that's just Hollywood. Today, you get to meet the real deal. Over the last 49 years of his career, he shaped the lives of thousands of young musicians. He was also a major positive influence in my life as he was my junior high and high school band director. That's right. If you didn't know me back then, you probably didn't know that I'm a drummer. Well, today's guest, he's also a drummer, but he's more than just a drummer. There's so much more to him. He's a man who once said, music is movement. So today, it's a very special guest. He's very important to me, Mr. Gene Inglis. Mr. Inglis, how are you today?
I'm good, Rob. It's great to see you. Thank you for having
Well, we're glad you're here. Before we get into what your experiences were with so many years of teaching young kids, I've never asked you this question. I was curious, and only, I guess, band directors and drum majors get to experience this. What's the feeling of when you take your baton and you go like that, hear that first note of an amazing song?
Well, that might be hard to describe. Knowing since you were in the band, you were a student, you know how much work goes into preparation. So when everything is falling in and everybody's successful, it's pretty amazing because you get to share a live moment with kids creating music right off the page. And so it's pretty special in that regard, but not from anything that I feel like I get to participate in that. Even though we worked hard, I try to use the performance as a place for hopefully the students and myself to have some sort of joy in that experience. And so it's pretty joyful.
I guess it's a great adrenaline rush beforehand too.
Yeah, I went through a lot of different things because my background, I was a very shy, even though you probably would have known it, a very shy person, and I didn't have a lot of confidence, and that showed up when I wasn't prepared. I learned that later, and we'll talk about that later as well. But what I learned to do was prepare, and then so the first early years of being a band director, I would go through my normal stuff with my body, either getting sick, throwing up, beforehand being very nervous, all that kind of stuff. And as I continued to get a little more confidence, then it would be none of that until after a performance. Say, like when you play for a contest, then that Sunday after, I usually was sick.
Wow.
And eventually, I got enough confidence that that's not an issue, so it's not about worrying about what you can't. It's just an internal thing. And I think I've taught a lot of students who have the same condition. They're not confident, they're scared, and it surfaces in a lot of different ways. It surfaces for some kids like they're angry or like they don't care and all this other stuff. And the fact is, they lack the confidence to even try sometimes to achieve. And I try to keep that in mind. Fortunately for me, I keep people along the way to help me with that, especially one person. But as far as Russian performance, and now I really can get to the joy. If I'm invited to do an honor band, there could be thousands of people that are watching, but I'm not bothered by that because I'm enjoying the process of what the students have done. And I try to focus on that and then try to make it not about me. And I realize, I'm involved with it, but for me, I have to internalize it as this is about the kids and the parents and that kind of thing.
Yeah. It just occurred to me, I never thought of that because when I was in the band, we're looking at you and we would try to block out the audience. And that kind of made us nervous when you look out, there are people there, but you had a double whammy being a director. They're in front and behind you.
Yeah, yeah. And initially it was kind of hard. I remember my first job in Scottsboro as a junior high director. We had a Christmas concert. I had like almost 100 kids in 7th and 8th grade class. And in the beginning class, the director knew not to let me teach them. The high school director did that because, I was learning. So I remember at the concert, I guess I fell back on humor in the concert, and I felt like an idiot because I knew that everybody was laughing because I was trying to be funny to cover up the fact that I was about to mess my pants. So after the performance, the person for the local theater company came up and offered me a role in one of their plays. And I said, there's no way I can do that, so it's kind of funny how people perceive what you're doing. You're the only one that really knows what's going on in your head.
So let me go back. You were a drummer. Your brother Albert taught you to play snare drum. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I'm the youngest of three, and all three of us um, were in the band for a portion of the time, but we're also kind of athletes too, as you were. My oldest brother started off on trumpet, but as soon as he got involved with football, he really couldn't do that anymore. Bert, same thing. He was a drummer, and he started playing football. Couldn't do that. Played all of them. Played everything: track and basketball and the whole 9 yards, baseball. And so Albert and I we spent more time together. We slept in the same room. We grew up together doing a lot of things. Sonny being the oldest, he was kind of allowed to do his own thing lots. We spent a lot of time together. Albert was very giving. He's quite an athlete, but looking back on it, Rob, and I need to tell him this. I don't know that I have told him this, but he really was good at allowing me to make mistakes and showing me how to do things, to the point that when I started band at Ida, we moved, and the band director that was there then just told me I was going to play trombone. He handed me this trombone and didn't tell me how to put it together. He didn't tell me anything about it. Just sent me home with it on the bus. I get it out. It smells like, you can imagine. And I just closed up the case and told my brother, he was still in band then. I said, just take this back to him. Tell him I'm not doing this. And so the next year we had a new director who was my brother's band director. His name was Johnny Shook. You know that name.
Yeah.
And so I tried to join the band, and my parents said, no, you quit last year. We're not going through this again. So by December, I wore them down, and they said, okay, whatever. So two things happened about that. One, I had to get my basketball coach to allow me to change his science class from one period to the other. It's both the same class. But when I showed him my transfer slip to the other period so I could take band, he asked me, so what are you doing? I said, I'm taking band. He said, well, put your hands on the desk. This from the whole class. And he gave me about 5 licks. It was not plugged. It was not plugged. That was the way they did it then. And then when he finished, he said, he signed the paper and gave it back to me and told me, let me know the next time you're going to do something stupid. That was that. So I got in. And so is at Ider, at a little school up in North Alabama on Sand Mountain. And Johnny, of course, was a great band director. And he needed a snare drummer for the high school. He knew I could play. He also knew I couldn't read music, because Albert wasn't teaching me that. He was just teaching grooves, So he talked to me and said, listen, I don't have a snare drummer. We're going to play at Gadsden for what they call now some sort of, well, we called it festival back then, concert festival. That's what you know it as. It's called LGP in Georgia now, and it's called MPA in Alabama. But it's all the same thing. We quit calling it festival because principals didn't know where we were going. Anyway, so he taught me all the parts by rote and put me in the high school band. And I was like in the 7th grade. And so then we moved. So I never really learned to read, because we moved to another school back to Stevenson. And that band director, long as we were playing, he didn't care what we played. I kind of took the first year, there were actually a few seniors in the section. And then they all graduated that year. And the next year it was just me. So I went out and recruited friends and did like my brother did me, and told them what to play. Went on from there. It wasn't until college, we'll talk about that later, when I learned to read.
Older brotherly influence. Usually you hear stories of brothers picking on younger brothers, but I'm sure there's some of that too.
Race. Brother told me to run over and pick up something one time. And I ran over and picked it up, and when I bent over, he shot me in the butt with a BB gun.
There you go. It's your price for being the baby, I guess.
That's right.
So
That's right.
you saved your money. What led you to Jack State? Because that's where you went to college first, correct?
It was a total transformation. Yeah, I had planned to go to junior college, it's called Northeast State in Alabama, and just try to get a business thing. And that's what I planned to do. My mother had always told me that I should teach. Her motivation was she was one of seven. She had a sister and five brothers. And during the Depression, and her youngest brother was born and her mother died. And so she had to quit school in ninth grade to raise him. And so she always noticed during the Depression that even though the teachers didn't make much, they did work, you know. So she was always telling me you should teach. And so that was always in the back of my mind. And my dad was a minister and a butcher and an ex-Marine. So I'll give you a picture. You had a dad like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, I kind of lost my track here, but yeah, that influence really made a big difference for me, and it's affected. And I tell students my whole life, anything I know of worth, I learned from somebody else who helped me learn it.
Wow. That's a great statement. So true. Now, can you give us the quick story about how you said it was a God thing that you weren't good enough to make the snare line. So how did you make the snare line at Jack State?
Well, you know, the reason I went to Jacksonville was my buddy in high school had a car. He said, we're going to take one of these senior days to go check out a school. And I said, where are we going? He said, we're going to Jacksonville. So he had never been there. And so went there, and it looked like the place was about abandoned. I don't know if it was a spring break or might have been something. So we'd the music building, which is Mason Hall on campus, and just went walking around. And we wound up on the top floor, and there was an office door open and a little man sitting in there. And he said, y'all come in. And it would turn out to be the band director, Dr. David L. Walters, who the department is named after now. And so he was so nice and everything. And my buddy wasn't really interested in doing that, although he was in promo too. I told the band director, I said, I was familiar with the drum line because one of my friends who was drum major at Stevenson went to JSU, and she was in the band, and she was the color guard, and she sent me a couple of albums for Christmas of the band. And so the drum line was on there. And so I knew I would love to play the drum line. I told him, I said, I'm not good enough to be in that line, but I would love the opportunity if you would only allow me the opportunity to try. And he told me then, he's, well, I like your attitude. So I meet him at band camp, and he remembered my name, which I still find that weird. But he's just one of those guys that remember names. And so the tryout, I went into my scared to death, not confident. And I actually walked off after about halfway through. I just fell apart, and I had to go off the side, and it was outside. I went over to a fence and puked, and I should say throw up. I
Whatever.
did.
That's good.
And so, to my surprise, they kept one alternate, and it was me. So the next couple of weeks, you know, a couple of things happened. One weekend, one of the guys in the drum line that played the part I'd auditioned for was an outdoors guy. He broke his arm right before the season started. And we had a preseason pro game before our season started, which I carried the American flag. Dr. Orchestral said, would you carry the American flag? I said, sure. And so that was another test to see if I was willing to do the stuff he wanted me to do. So when Carl broke his arm, the other guys taught me the parts. It kept me up most of the night. And so I learned everything. So I really didn't miss a ball game that year, just that one pro game. And I think it was in Birmingham, and Johnny Unitas was playing with the Baltimore Colts. So that was okay.
Nice.
Yeah, that's back when.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got in, is that Carl broke his arm. And so, and we're all still close, good buddies.
Sure. Now, what do you think was some of the great life lessons that you learned from the drum line?
Well, the one thing I need to connect to that is I didn't plan on being a music major. I just went there to major in history, maybe teach. And I was so shy. I went in registration. It was just a big old room with a lot of people sitting around desks. You had to fill out, you had to get people to sign off on these classes. I had a friend that helped me pick the classes. All of them were full, of course, because she knew which teachers to pick, and those were full. And so I come out of there, I've got 11 courses for the first semester, and most of them are music courses. I didn't know what I was doing. And so, I was in there 5 hours trying to do registration. So I came out and I just started going to class. They didn't have a music. So I go in, you have to major on an instrument. So you're going to have to do, back then, you had to do 4 years. 8 semesters of an apply. They called it applied. So you had to major on an instrument. So you had to do a public recital at the end of your senior year. They didn't teach percussion. So I said, what am I going to do? And they said, well, you have to play something else. I said, what do you have? I didn't have money. They said, we've got some baritones. I said, I'll take one. So I majored on baritone horn. And that was another experience. Fortunately, key people helped me through all that. Throughout starting with that whole very first week, they just, some of them, one or two of them were more helpful than others because some are more kind than others. So there was a combination of working through that because it's something I wanted. So I wanted it enough to do whatever it took at the time to be in the line. Matter of fact, I called home that weekend. My mother said, you don't have to stay. And I said, it's really not what I need to hear right now. So one of the guys would physically actually hit you if you messed up. So, and he's a professional drummer somewhere in the world now, but the others were, but just since most of what I learned was by rote, you learn that if you do it enough and you learn it the right way, you can do it. You have to have that confidence. That it's interesting how that I had confidence about playing and I would do the work, but I didn't associate that with other parts of my life. Like we were talking about the phone earlier. And when I played the baritone, I had no confidence about that. But luckily, after floundering for 2 years, the head of the department, I went to him and he did something that was key in that role to help me through all that, at least learn how to deal with it.
Now, go ahead.
Anyway, the drummers still leaving. We still have a reunion with all those old guys and we still play some a couple of times a year and usually perform with when the alumni comes back with the band. So in the summer we have like a 3 or 4 day. We just play.
That's great.
Enjoy each other.
Yeah.
Try to involve some of the younger ones. Like my son-in-law was a drummer at JSU and a section leader, and he's the band director where I was. Allison, did you know Allison? His wife. They all lived there and very active with the band. So, yeah.
So who was your biggest influence on becoming a band director?
That's, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do it the whole time it's going through all this, but I think the key thing was I always listened to great music. My parents were both musical. They both sang. My dad actually played drums, some in the Quantico band during World War II with the Marine Corps. So when I was in college, I would listen. I figured out a cappella choir was their class was open to me. So I would sit at the bottom of the stairs. I'd listen to them every day, not every day, but every time they met. And so eventually I wound up inside just listening and I loved it. So one day, then the teacher was also what we call my theory lab teacher. And he was kind of mean as a snake, but his products were musically just amazing. And so he was looking for a tenor. He asked me to come in his office, sit down and sing. So I did. And he kind of cursed and said, "You're not what I'm looking for." And I said, "Okay." And then he said, "I see you in our choir rehearsals back there. Do you want to be in the choir?" And I said, "I'd be honored." He said, "One thing." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Never sing like that again." He said, "You pay attention to me and learn." Well, most of the music that I shared with the whole band when you were in band and all the other years that I taught probably came mostly from that experience because I learned most of the music through choir because he was an incredible choir teacher. He was also the brass choir teacher. So the brass choir was huge, and we used to call it sit down Southerners because it was just really gangbusters. It was good. And so again, he sat down by me on a bench in the hall and said, I need a timpani player. I said, you know what? I never saw timpani until I moved here. He said, well, I need a timpani player. I said, well, if you give me an opportunity, I'll try. He said, okay. He said, tomorrow and Tuesday, we meet Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I go, and man, the first thing they're playing like Symphony for Brass and Percussion by Alfred Reed. It takes six timpani to play that thing. And I'm just watching. I didn't play a note. I thought, oh my Lord. And so after rehearsal, he leaves the podium. He says some derogatory thing toward me and says, you've got till Thursday. And so between Tuesday and Thursday, I memorized the piece. And that's how I learned that timpani. But that was kind of the thing. So he really gave me the passion for all of it. And there was one guy that was a piano player that helped me through theory. He would say, don't worry about all this stuff. You're going to make a C. I'm going to make an A. I said, C sounds good to me because I don't know what they're talking about. He said, don't worry about it. So that freshman year, his name was Terry Lowry, neat guy. We were buddies. He played piano like crazy. And so I said, am I ever going to make any better? And so he says, no, because they know you're cheating. So you're just going to be satisfied with a C. But I knew the next year I would have a good teacher, Dr. Walters, to get me through that, which I did. And he was great because he would figure out where you were as an individual, gnostically, with just asking questions. And then he would fill in the holes and tell you, go work on this. This is where you are. You go work on this, and you'll catch up. And you learn a lot about teaching by people who are great teachers sometimes. Yeah. If you pay attention or want to.
Yeah. Now, I remember I gave you a book after I graduated college, and it was a book called Bob Knight, His Own Man. And I sent it to you as a compliment. And I remember what I wrote in there. I said, you would have been a hell of a coach. And I want to use a quote that I saw that you said one time. You said, with music students, we come together and create bonds and work on a common thing together. Music is something that builds accomplishment in people. I always felt that you were an amazing team builder and like a coach, that I watched you from the back of the band room put the brass together, put the woodwinds together. And, when I said at the introduction, you're so much more than just a drummer, but you knew the heartbeat of the band was from the percussion line. But then watching you in concert band and jazz band, it's like, man, you're always putting the pieces together. And that's what I meant by being a hell of a coach, because I thought you were. And
What's interesting about that, Rob, is when I was in high school, I thought I'd be a basketball coach.
wow.
I played basketball till my 10th grade year. My mom said, you got to pick one. You can't do both. So I thought, well, I like playing drums, so I don't have to win sprints.
Yeah, well, I remember in junior high when we had the end of the year little picnic thing where there was softball and we were in the gym, and I was like, hey, Mr. Inglis can play some hoops.
Well, yeah, I always had one until we moved back over here, and I hadn't shot in quite a while. I don't think I can get the ball up very high now.
But yeah, and I thought really the unique thing was in band when we were section leaders. Now we're peers trying to lead our peers.
Mm-hmm.
And we only got good at that because you helped us with that. And there's that leadership thing. And I remember you did something for me one time when, I'm just this punk drummer trying to lead other, guys of the same age and attitude. And it was a Friday night before a football game. We were warming up and nobody was listening to me. And you could tell there's some frustration going on. And I really hadn't built up the credibility to be a good leader. And all those things, looking back, you just wish you could go back and be better. But you came over to the drummers and you said, listen, Rob's not perfect, something like that, but he is your section leader and you do need to listen to him. And I was like, all of a sudden I had this credibility from you. And I didn't thank you at the time. I just felt like, oh, finally my boys are going to listen to me. But You make those mistakes and you learn from them. What did you notice near the end of your career about kids different than, I'm not just going to glorify the 80s and 90s, but you can tell from my perspective teaching kids in tennis, they're different. What do you notice about kids near the end of your career versus beginning?
Yeah, I thought a lot about these directors that had retired early and then wanted to come back. Almost most of them that I know that did that never really fit back in because there is a process of change that is happening all the time. And I felt like I was becoming more and more a psychologist and more like trying to band-aid things, always trying to fix things because especially during COVID, the kids were already in a cycle where that they trying hard was not fashionable, is not within their grasp, is not part of their thinking. I know one common thing about you and I is we had strong parents that had expectations, and those expectations, whether we liked them or not, were always a part of us that guided us in everything we do. And I know at colleges, a lot of times people say, well, let's go do so and so. And I go, no. And really what I was thinking was my daddy might come out of a bush and catch me, like whatever you're trying to get me to do. Yeah. And I think that's absent, especially when I came back to Alabama in my particular area, the socioeconomic area after Fort McClellan closed began to spiral in the wrong direction. And so you're in an area where it's mostly rental property. There's no area where it's going to expand because it's what it is, and that so the population drops off, and then the people who can leave. This is throughout the whole country, if not the whole world, has this issue, and I had to learn some other ways to communicate, even though I'm still going to try to bring them to the understanding of what they have to have as a person to be successful, which still has to do with self-discipline, but it's harder and harder and harder to teach. To some kids, they don't even know what you're talking about. They don't have the example. But, sometimes I have found with some of the ones that I didn't know I could even that I was making any connections with. I think this one young lady that she was angry. I don't know if the dad left or whatever. Mom was always dating different folks and different things. She had a younger brother. He eventually was in the band too, but she a very smart girl, but she was an angry girl. And so she was the best flute player and, you know, made her section leader at college. But I told her, I was to say, you're going to have to find some compassion here. And fought with that all the time. I found out that she was cursing them all, dropping the F-bomb and everything else with these little kids. And for the small schools, you're playing 7 to 12 with these kids, in the same class. So I talked to her, and it was an interesting thing. I mean, she didn't argue with me about it. She sat there and cried. Now she's out and she's an officer in the Navy, and she's with some kind of cybersecurity stuff. And she left a thing you could buy. They were trying to raise money for the music department in the performance center and sell a chair. You put a plaque on it and you dedicate the chair to somebody. And so she dedicated 2 different chairs to me.
That's great.
And she's to do something like exact words, but some people call Mr. Inglis this, they call him that, but I call him that.
Come on.
Yeah, so that was, and so you don't know who's getting it, but sometimes you find out. Just God, I think it's a God thing too to let you know, but it is difficult. And for me, I still love to teach. I help my daughter's band a couple of days a week. I just go in and help her do whatever she'd like me to do. And I still love to teach, but in that particular situation, they were denying me access to middle school kids. And I'm like, this program is, you have to have people to teach. If you don't have people, it's hard to teach them. But, because the kids have access to everything, they got it right there in their phones. Even poor people have phones, which I find odd because the phones are expensive. But they think they know stuff when they really don't know the basic thing they need. And that's harder and harder to teach. But thank God for the people who still want to do it. It's a little bit different everywhere you go, but it's also kind of same. Like today, they're all about their feelings and and I told Gina's class the other day, Gina was not there. And I told them a couple of stories. One was about the quarterback for Indiana and about his story. And it got me thinking, you asked me to do this, got me thinking about, who inspires you and that kind of stuff. And of course, his inspiration is his mother, he says. And so I told them that story because they didn't know anything about it. And then I told them about you asking me to do this. And I said, I've been thinking about that. I go back. My mother had polio and she was told she'd never walk. And she had 5 brothers, like I said, and a sister. And so her brothers would take her to Tennessee River, which was close by, and take her in there swimming. Her dad, because he was so worried about her, he didn't want her in the river, afraid she'd drown or whatever. And then he would whip all of them, including her. And it turns out swimming allowed her to learn how to walk. Both legs were tiny. And she never complained about it. I mean, she had some terrible falls throughout her life. One time she fell and cut her jugular vein. Luckily, she was in Tampa, so there was a hospital there to take care of that pretty quick back then. But, that's an inspiration that sticks with you. Sometimes you might not even be aware of it, that you've got somebody there that she always supported me. Even her telling me I could come home, she really would like me to come home, but then she didn't push it because she knew I had a dream, a goal. So I think that's all related, but it's also a lot of the kids I taught in the past few years don't even have that background, and that makes it really hard. And then there's the parents today that have not given that to their kids, even though that maybe they don't understand how important it is, because I think sometimes we're focused on ourselves.
Right. Like you mentioned about feelings. Well, you even mentioned that the judging scores, when we went to festivals, it was 1 superior, 2 was what considered good,
It was excellent.
excellent,
3
and then 3, 4.
was good. 4 was fair. 5 was bad.
Okay, so
There is no bad now. There is no bad now. First started teaching, it was still that way. And people don't like that. That hurts their feelings. They don't. But now it's like a lot of directors, they get upset if they don't make all ones. Everybody wants to make all ones. Everybody can make all ones. And of course, that's the drive. And I finally had to come to grips with stop focusing on that. And I would try to teach. I even started doing this in middle school. Stop focusing on that and focus on getting to the place where you know what you're doing well enough that you can enjoy doing it. I think even as an athlete, you can have a bad game, but if you enjoy the process, the wins and losses, they matter, but it's part of the process. All of a sudden we sound like Nick Saban over here.
there's worse.
That's right. That's right.
Well, that's the beauty of music, that even though we were striving, and I know we would never have accepted a 2 because, and you never said we have to go get 1s, but we had the expectations that when you got a 1, there was no other thing, like 2 would have been horrible. And, the first time we got 1s as a drum line, everybody was shocked because we were screwballs and we really weren't applying ourselves. But you got us on the right path. And then once we had that success, we're like, oh, we can do this and let's do it again. But those expectations, that's what you put in us, instilled in us.
Well, even Dr. Lassiter, your superintendent, when you were there, he's a tough guy. He hired me. But one thing I picked up on him real early was he was big about expectations. He respected people that had expectations. Most of the principals are scared to death of him. And I can see why, but I think they were missing the point. Any job is not just filling out this and filling out that and doing these things. It's about having passion for what you're doing and realizing who's important in the school business is the kids. And then there's a lot of bumps along the way. Man, as a first year teacher, our oldest granddaughter, Gina's daughter, name's Taylor, this is her first year teaching. It's tough. That was hard for me. Anytime you start, it's hard, but it's really hard these days. It's hard. And sometimes the place where the person that hired you, who should give you the most support, is the least capable of giving it to you because they're kind of leaning toward the political side of things.
Right.
So, and
That's
that's
tough.
a whole nother story, isn't it?
Yeah. You enjoy, now you can say this because you're not in front of a band, but did you enjoy conducting marching band, jazz band in the morning, or concert band? Was there a particular style you enjoyed conducting more?
There's something about all of them that I love. The jazz stuff for me was not, Johnny gave me the opportunity to push me in that direction. I didn't know that I knew enough about it to do it. But then I realized because I was a drummer and all I did was listen to Buddy Rich's band, that was part of my thinking. But it's kind of funny. If you talk to different people, if you talk to the jazz people in Georgia, it was around when we were doing all that in Georgia, they would say, well, Gene's a jazz guy. But if you heard the concert band, they'd say, no, he's a concert guy. But if you heard the marching band, they'd say he's a marching band guy. I just love music. And it's kind of like when I listen to music on my own, I can't stay on one thing. I got to move around a little bit. I can't stay on just one thing, one genre. Well, I think everybody may be that way a little bit, get in the mood.
That's one of my questions. And I said to my wife, I said, I want to know what a band director listens to. Like, I've always wondered what a rock band listens to before they go on stage. So when you're down the dumps, you need to pick me up. What type of music do you listen to?
I don't know. From my mother's side, I love beautiful music because she has some orchestral recordings I would listen to. But I guess pick me up stuff, it's probably going to be jazz. I mean, if you notice, a lot of the marching band stuff we did had a lot of jazz elements in it, so in Rome to have that program and it to be successful because it's demanding and but it was really good and I was glad to be a part of it. Sometimes, well, I'll tell you, when I was doing junior high, I would go home and listen to I would record all my classes. I'd go home and listen to them. And then I would compare what we're doing to professional recordings and stuff. And so one time Shinley came in, she said, now, is that the recording of professional people or is that your band? I said, well, that's my band. And she said,
Nice.
And then I began to think, well, maybe we're on the right track here, So I forget who told me to record yourself. But when I started recording myself, I thought, the guy talking is an idiot. That was you catch doing a lot of bad habits, jumping, hiding one kid you let one person bother you and you can't let it go, and all the rest of them go, can you get past that? It's, we're here.
Right. Well, that takes a lot of guts. To have anybody record yourself. I've seen myself give lessons, and that's a tough thing. It's like, oh gosh, I wish nobody heard that, but that's the way you get better.
Yeah, I was told do it in private because you're not going to do this in front of anybody.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and tell the fact. If you can listen to yourself, you go, oh God.
Yeah. Yeah. That does make you better though. That's I mean, I think the good ones are their own worst critics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too.
Now, who do you think was the greatest drummer of all time? Is it Buddy Rich?
Gee, there's so many that are so good. I'm not qualified to say. I will say this: my dad went to a USO show during World War II. I don't know if he was in Brazil. It might be been down in Brazil, but it was a Buddy Rich band, and he got to stand behind him during his set, and he always said, "I've never seen people's hands move like that in my life." Yeah, it's like he could play about all of the stuff with one hand, just about. But
Unbelievable.
and and I know he was a jerk. Now, you remember Greg Smith?
Yeah, very well.
So Greg, and his dad, mom would take Shelly and I on a couple of trips to go hear the Rich band. So that was a blessing to actually get to hear him play. In one story, you might not know that when I was in Scottsboro, the high school director knew that I loved the Rich band. And so he got tickets for he and his wife, Sharon, and his name was Jack. And Shelly and I to go to Huntsville High School to see the Rich band. I remember it was raining and everything. So we went, and I won't go through all that. But I learned the next years when I went to Rome that the Rich band left Huntsville that night. Then they go, trekking through across to Fort Payne, then over Lookout Mountain toward Rome. Somewhere on top of Lookout Mountain, of course, Rich would get drunk and scream and holler at the band all the time. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Buddy Rich tapes. Have you
No,
ever?
no.
Well,
Okay.
we'll record his rants, and they're terrible. So he threw the bass player off the bus somewhere on Lookout Mountain. The next day, they're supposed to perform at West Rome High School. Now, I'm not there yet. This was probably the spring of 74, probably spring of 74. Yeah. And Johnny told me this later. He said they had to hire somebody, a union musician from Atlanta, and get him over to Rome to be able to start the concert. And it was a couple hours late because of that. But yeah, he just threw him out on the mountain.
That's tough love.
I don't know if you've been on that road, but that'd be
Yeah. Nice.
a little scary.
Deliverance country, right?
That's right.
My goodness. I remember my third grade, I was in Western Pennsylvania growing up before I came down south. And my third grade chorus teacher one day said something. He said, imagine your life without music. And I've always taken that a step further, being biased to be a drummer, that imagine any song without drums. And it's like,
Mhm.
you kind of need drums. But then again, you can, and he said, you can't watch a TV show or a movie without music. It just adds so much to it. And that stuck with me forever.
Right. And thinking about the percussion side of it, when we identify to a great marching band, they're going to have a really good drum section, and if they don't, it's just not quite as good as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Right.
just
Yeah. As far as auditioning, and I was really surprised to hear you at the beginning talking about the physical side of you before performances. What is the scariest audition that you ever were part of, or was it a performance or conducting?
well, it probably was me trying out the drum line. That was I was so scared. So when I started with the baritone, and I had a professional jazz trombone player teaching me at JSU, he just felt sorry for me. And every lesson he would say, they should get y'all a percussion teacher. This is just not fair. And I knew, I've got to do, by then I'm committed to what I'm doing. Major in music. I'm going to try to get that degree. And so by my sophomore year, I thought I'm not learning anything. And so most of that probably was my fault, feeling sorry for myself or just going in there and not knowing what to do or how to get started. Maybe that's it. So I knew I needed to fix that. I'd already had a class with the head of the music department, Dr. Finley, who was a professional trombone player. And I went to him and I said, I really need you to teach me. He said he was too busy. He changed his mind. So I'll get to it real quick. First lesson was all about breathing. And so he had the whole system. It was an hour lesson. Second lesson, I was supposed to play. And one thing I loved about Dr. Finley, he gave you three things. At the end of every class, no matter what class it was, three things you're going to do before the next class. And he would say, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. And he'd go over it again, those three things. So my second lesson, I went into my nervous stuff. I started playing a note. He said, put the horn down. And I wish I had all that on tape. He talked to me for about an hour about, you think you're terrible? I said, I am. He said, no, this is your problem. It's what you think. He said, you're one of these guys that you're going to have to convince yourself, and this is what you have to do. And he told me, you're going to have to super prepare. Like the guy before you probably doesn't even practice, but he's going to make an A because he can play. You're going to have to play until you convince you. You're going to have to practice to convince you. You're going to have to do however many, I don't know how that's hours, months, days, years, but you're going to have to do the work to convince yourself. And so, and here was the key thing. And this is what I remember when I teach. And if you don't, this is the last thing he said, I'll fail you. You'll fail. And so that's great motivation. So I knew I was going to do those three things every time. The three things are going to change every time because there's more work to do, more work to do. And so if I get asked to do something that I'm not even this, I have to really do a number on myself to kind of prepare myself to do what I'm going to do. I'm not like an idiot. So like I sing in a choir at church, but if they want me to sing solo, that's going to be some doing. That's going to take me some time. So I can't do like my brother-in-law and then prompt to a solo. I just don't, that's not me,
Yeah. Well, that's so key, the preparation that breeds confidence. And you hear it from athletes and people that, why are they great? Because they prepared so much.
Yeah. And so when I started teaching in Rome, I won't say names. So this one child, and she cried every time I asked her to play. And I said, you don't have to play right now, but you're going to have to play because that's how you get your grade. And you have to teach yourself that you can do it. I get so embarrassed with it. And I said, well, everybody's on some level of that. Yours may be worse than everybody else's. But so I would do that. And the parents would call me and complain. But then I'm thinking about Dr. Finley. I mean, you're going to have to do this. If you want to do this, this is what you have to do. This is how you do it. And we can delay it some. But while we're delaying it for you, you're getting behind.
Yeah, that's huge. And it's getting over any type of fear. And I remember, having to play in front of you or playing in front of anybody else to try out. It's, I can feel those nerves to this day, but, it's such a life lesson that you have to put yourself out there.
Uh,
And afterwards, that scary thing is empowering at the same time.
Well, I'll tell you, even as an adult, when I was in Rome, the Marine Band came to town and the Air Force Band came to town. Both times, they wanted me to conduct a march at the concert. Well, I didn't go to the concert because I couldn't deal with that. Well, now I know that it wouldn't have mattered if I just stood up there. They're going to play whatever it is they're going to play. But I had to learn to get me out of it. I had to get my thought process to get me out of it and realize it's not about me. It's not about me. And that's the reason my teaching goes the way it does, is because it's really not about me. It's about the kids sitting in front of you. So time I put me in it, it all gets screwed up.
You're a great teacher. And I'm not just saying that because I'm talking to you, but I've researched teachers and coaches. And one of the greatest things I heard John Wooden say, teaching is transference of knowledge. And the stuff that we did, it wasn't just you bloviating, it's what we learned through the action and, through the tryouts and doing stuff in front of your peers. And I remember you saying to the band one time, I'm going to make you sing that note so you can find the pitch. And we drummers would look at each other like, we sure are glad that all we do is hit the drum because we're not singing. But, as a drummer, in the last 18 months, we lost two drummers. Greg Smith passed away and Jeff Guerin passed away. And both of those hit me kind of hard. And I told my wife, I said, I've been on sports teams to where it's, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, and then you go your different ways. But being a drummer, you're next to each other every day for 180 to 200 days a year, hour after hour after hour through, the blood, sweat, and tears of band camp, and then the joy of football games and those things. And it's a tight knit that's really hard to explain. I guess the ones in the saxophone line or trombone line can say the same thing, but There's something tight about band that's just, I think, underappreciated.
Well, I agree. And you do create such strong bonds when you're in a group, and that could be a team or it could be a band. But, and the more time you spend together, especially when you try to get along, still that's the hardest part in life is trying to get along.
Hmm.
In a group, you learn to do that. Realize your differences they don't need to hurt you. They need to be part of the process.
But I got to be considerate of your time, and I want to wrap up with a few drummer questions here. Did you ever have a preference play? I mean, I love playing timpani and concert band, and then quads or snares. Did you have anything that you preferred to play over the other?
Well, I'm with you on that. I loved playing timpani. I was a principal timpani for Rome Symphony for several years until it just got too busy with life to do all that stuff. And then, yeah, just getting to be a part of it. Yeah, just getting to play is the I agree, snare and the tenors but I know that over here with the drum line, the JSU line, those bass drummers are just snare drummers on the bass drum.
Crazy good.
They play those parts like crazy. They're just playing snare parts up and down those bass drums. You've got 7 or 8 tonal basses, and they're just crushing it. I thought they've all got skills.
Yeah.
I got to take a look at Gina's drummer the other day. He's a smart guy. He's a confident guy. And he said, listen, they have a volunteer class on Wednesday nights in the winter at JSU where you can just bring a drum pad and pair of sticks and go all drummers drum, including college guys and girls. And he came back, he said, boy, I learned a lesson. I said, what's that? He said, I got a long way to go. I thought I was pretty good. I said, well, that's an important thing to know.
Well, you mentioned your family. I call it generational influence. So your son Tony, he was in the Army band, is that correct?
Yeah, he did 20 years with the 313th, and they were in Birmingham. Now they've moved to Huntsville. He he did that for 20 years, and now he's a stay-at-home dad, and he plays occasionally, church and stuff, sings in the choir, but he's in charge of taking care of those girls he's got and getting them to all the dance lessons and art lessons and theater lessons. You name it, he's on the road over there in Franklin, Tennessee. His wife is an actuary, so she's busy as well all the time.
And your middle one, Gina, and she's at what's the school in Alabama where she's band director?
Now, actually, she was in Etowah County for a number of years. She taught 1 year in Georgia, and she started out over here in Alabama and went to Georgia for a year and came back at Gaston in Etowah County. And so I encouraged her to come this way because Calhoun County pays better and for band directors. And I said, you think about your retirement, so you need to get that up where it needs to be more helpful. But yeah, she's at Ohatchee. I think this is her 5th year there. So 25 all total for her.
Wow.
How about that? Time flies.
That makes me feel getting up there because I remember when she was a little kid hanging out with us.
Right.
And then your youngest, Allison, you said now your grandson plays drums in the Rome drum line, correct?
He marched his freshman year this year. He marched center tenor. And of course, his dad's a band director, and he was a drummer at JSU as well. Those kind of crazy connections. Gina teaches at West End. I mean, Allison teaches at West
Wow.
End, where you went to school, and she's some kind of she's a literacy coach. That's what she does.
Nice.
And she got 2 boys. She has the 2 boys. We have four granddaughters and 2 grandsons.
You and I are in the same boat that we both married way up, and
Yeah.
we all have respected Mrs. Inglis because she was there through everything. And I think I know who you were alluding to earlier, talking about somebody supporting you. So tell me.
Yeah, there's no way to get around that. And then sometimes over the years, I remember early on in Rome, I would get so frustrated. I loved teaching my first year of teaching, because I was an assistant and he told me what to do, everything to do. I didn't have to think. But when I came to Rome, it was not that way. And it was painful. And I hated it the first year. And Shinley would get me straight. before I came back to school the next day. She kicked me in the butt and told me that's stupid what you're doing. You need to plan something else. That even though that's not a fun feeling, it's good to have somebody to be, as you said earlier, somebody to be honest with you. You're going down the wrong road,
Yeah. Yeah. Your number one fan and supporter.
and it's amazing. As soon as we got over here, Gina started having children, and she's been the super grandma the whole time. So we love that.
Yeah.
Do that.
Well, before we wrap up, I had reached out to several of my close bandmates and some drummers to say, that we're having this conversation, and they have some questions for you. Uh-oh. So one question was about mental toughness. Yeah, we talked about that. It was a super question that we wanted to find out, the mental toughness that's created from extracurricular activities such as band. But okay, which senior class was your favorite? And maybe my green Westrom, but it has to be the class of '84 since we went from junior high through high school with you. No other class did that. So
Yeah, I feel that way.
okay,
I feel that.
that doesn't get you into trouble with any other class.
Just the honor that you actually stayed with me was huge. I mean, because you think about 7 years with the same person.
Yeah, yeah, it was good. Well, it was character building. There's days, but and I felt it was tougher being a drummer because you knew what drummers were like, and I thought like these other people in the band don't know what a drummer's like. So, all right, all right, this is one from a drummer. You'll get a kick out of this. If you were in high school, would you ever skip your spring concert to go to Atlanta to see the Ozzy Osbourne and Motley Crue concert?
Well, I grew up at a different time. Oh, wouldn't.
Yeah, there you go.
But that's something else that was transformative too that I had to learn. It's going to be okay, So my attitude has shifted. Not that I'm saying everything's okay, but some things, you just kind of have to realize it's not the end of the world as a director.
Yeah.
We are human beings. I tried real hard to get people. I had one parent back at Western that was upset because the football team was winning all the time, which means every Thanksgiving we were playing football. And for 4 years, as you recall, and he actually came and cried in my office, and he wouldn't listen to me. I said, "Listen, cannot make a comment to the band that it's okay to miss, but as a parent, you should do what you feel like is right and what you need to do." But he wouldn't. He wanted me to say, "You have my blessing." I said, "I can't give you my blessing because I have to be there and I'm expected to have a band there." And I said, "That's my job, but you just need to do what you need to do as a parent." And I was trying to say, go Wisconsin for Thanksgiving. I mean, but it is hard. And you do have to, and it's not like you're lying. It's just, I can't give you the blessing. I can privately say,
Right. Yeah.
it'd be okay. And that had to change with me too, because I grew up with a different set of teachers who they were just iron fisted. No, no exceptions. What I learned is that's easier for people to say no exceptions. When reality is, it's much harder to try to be flexible and work with people.
Mm-hmm.
In the way that the world has changed, that's what you and I have to do now. We have to be flexible with people because it's a different world.
Well, I remember that night of the spring concert, the drummers that were there were like, holy cow, these guys aren't showing up. They told us they were going to this concert. And I talked to one of them not too long ago, and he said he enjoyed the concert, but when he was walking up the stairs at the Omni thinking, this was fun, but I don't know how I'm going to face Mr. Inglis tomorrow.
Yeah.
I know they had some punishment. So anyway, one of the compliments that was one of the drummers wanted me to pass on is thank you for turning him into a Steely Dan freak. And I love Steely Dan too. So we played so much of them.
Yeah, I tried so hard to get Tony into that, and he finally did like that. And there was a whole album that Woody Herman did, and it was influenced by Steely Dan. So he was trying to be current and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One of those charts that we played, and I don't know if you got to play it or not, North Beach Breakdown. Did you ever get to play
No.
that? It's kind of hard, but it was off of the Woody Herman album, and it was, I don't know if it had anything to do with Steely Dan, but it was crazy wild. But I loved it. It was funk, and changed meters and stuff. But I loved it. And I had parents. Johnny Shuck told me, he said, "That's just crap." I said, "Well, that's crap I like, man."
That's the beauty of music.
Yeah, I will give you this. Didn't like spending time on stuff that I wasn't going to like after it was worked up. If I
Right.
wasn't going to like it, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it.
Right. Yeah.
And I could show that y'all like it too.
Well, I heard the Marriage of Figaro not too long ago, and I told my wife, I said, I remember playing that, and it's like, boom, I hit the beat, and it's just all those great songs are just, they stick with you forever. So
Yeah, now we know about the brain, and we know what brain mapping is, but that's what music does, is it maps your brain.
yeah. Um, well, I want to leave everybody with a quote that you said. I'm not sure exactly when you said it, but it stuck with me, and I think this is true. This is something that you said, that our goal has been to make music and to play our instruments on the highest level we can. This is giving kids the confidence and equip them to be better people in their communities. This was a motivating factor for me, and I'm going to end the interview with that. You've been an amazing influence for me as many years as I've known you. That's a long way to go back. So I really appreciate your time and insights today.
That means a lot to me, Rob, and you mean a lot to me. And matter of fact, it's you and people like you have created what we have been able to enjoy our whole lives, is sharing music together and sharing the life together from time to time.
A couple of notes. You mentioned how everyone following in together, a part of a band. That's what's so great about the band. And you said anything worth learning that you learned from somebody else. I thought that was pretty huge.
Absolutely.
Strong parents, strong expectations. I think we need to revisit that and become more of that. You talked about your self discipline, and it's not all about our feelings and enjoying the process. It's like doing anything is not just for the results, but like on a day to day basis and enjoying the preparation. Maybe that's Bobby Knight's, will to win. The will to prepare to win is so much more important than just winning.
I never threw a chair, but I did throw a baton once.
There you go. Good one. And maybe it was in my direction. I don't know. It was towards the back of the room. That's good.
Remember the old West Drum band room had all those blinds up there. It was really the first year teaching. The middle school kids were wild. And so I tried to scare them, but I didn't realize what was going to happen. I took my baton at those blinds, and they all come crashing down on the people that were back there. And it was like maybe the tubas and stuff like that. And fearful. I was so scared somebody was hurt or anything. And so I just stood there quiet, and they kind of climbed out of all of it. And I didn't really say anything. They didn't say anything, but in my mind, I was thinking, oh my God, I just lost my job. So I never did anything else after that.
You'd be gone today.
It went crashing down.
That's epic. Well, again, I appreciate your time, and I can't wait to edit this and write down some more nuggets. So again, I appreciate your time. And for the rest of you, if you like this episode, make sure you subscribe, send it to somebody else, and share some other episodes too. So till next time, make the most of your time and hang tough.